the Nigeria's Governors Forum has finally thrown its weight behind the proposed tax reform bills currently at the National Assembly. In a statement on Thursday, the group proposed an equitable sharing formula for the value-added tax, VAT. The development was an outcome of a meeting between the Nigerian Governors Forum and the Presidential Tax Reform Committee, convened on January the 16th, 2025, to deliberate on critical national issues, including the reform of Nigeria's fiscal policies and tax system. Joining us live to discuss this, we have business and public policy analyst Kenneth Ikenwa. One welcome to you, Kenneth, and thanks for joining us on the news.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, Kenneth, let's start with this. What are the potential economic implications of the governor's support for this tax reform bills in the context of Nigeria's current fiscal challenges?
All right, it's good to see that the governors have arrived at a consensus to support the initiative to boost the tax net of the country. That means that the GDP to tax ratio, the tax to GDP ratio for Nigeria most likely will increase because there are a lot of leakages in the system that will have accounted and amounted to a lot of revenue for the federal government and other states' government. Now, the overall implications of this is that we're going to have the reforms and the systemic integration will amount to more revenues being collected. Excesses and leakages, where we have leakages in the system, can also be plugged and blocked. And most likely, if the tax administration structure itself is well integrated and well understood and information disseminated, it will mean that all and sundry, most especially the Nigerian people, should be able to benefit from this. So the most important thing is for us to identify the challenge. And the challenge is whether or not all hands will actually come on deck, and whether or not these monies would actually be, put to use with the appropriate corporate governance mechanisms, which are transparency, accountability, full disclosure, and open book government. If these four pillars are actually integrated into the system, then it should be all smiles for Nigeria and most importantly, Nigerian peoples. There will be more infrastructure development, and there will be more money to disseminate to other sectors, critical sectors that have suffered in the last 2 to 3 years because of the paucity and the scarcity of funds.
Now, I'd like to take you from there, Kenneth. We've seen that, like you rightly said, this tax reforms, if the bill is passed, it will mean more money for the governors, and more money sometimes doesn't necessarily mean more development. From a layman's point of view, we do know there's a trust deficit between the governed and the government. They believe, that all money that goes to government is taken through corruption, and they don't really see that affects the benefits of paying more taxes. How would you explain, how would you break it down to the layman that, look, this is beneficial and it's a good thing, and it's to pay your taxes?
Well, if we must be holistic in our analysis of this new bill and the reform that have been passed, so we're very great that it would be actually involved, because it has been tagged a people-centric tax bill, which means that for the majority of the Nigerian people, well over 50 to 60%, they may be exempted from paying taxes, either directly or indirectly, and they definitely would now see that the areas where leakages have been, especially in the generation of corporate taxes and other areas where taxes ought to have been generated and collected and distributed with all equity and with all certainty and with convenience, where the corporation is there, especially those at the top echelon of society, the high net worth individuals, the corporations that are not paying the taxes they're supposed to pay. If we can aggregate all these taxes together, I think, from what I have read and from what I have heard and from what has been disseminated, it is going to be to the benefit of the Nigerian people. But one area where this present reform, in my own view and in my capacity as an intellectual, has not been able to address Nigerians, whether people, whether corporations, whether entities, whether foreigners that come into Nigeria, investors, are made to pay a lot of indirect taxes. And I've often said, right on this platform, that Nigerians and Nigerian corporations, firms, small businesses actually pay not multiple taxes, but multiplex taxes. By that I mean multiple taxes and complex taxes that you cannot actually explain or give a reason for which the tax is being, collected in the first place. So if we can address the real issue, which is, will Nigerians be made to continue to pay indirect taxes whilst we have, this smokescreen of called this reform? Once we address that issue, then I think the Nigerians will be more willing to pay their direct taxes and the government will be smiling at the end of the day. And we can also tell the Nigerian people what these taxes are actually used for. Let them see it, let them believe it, and let it become a part and parcel of our culture, which means compliance will increase and definitely collection will definitely increase.
Absolutely, and it's also part of their patriotic duty. Now, Kenneth, what would the impact of this proposed tax reforms have on fiscal autonomy for local infrastructure, have on fiscal autonomy, I beg your pardon, of state and local governments in Nigeria? Because oftentimes the ordinary Nigerian looks to the center they blame the center, rightly so, because they get the bulk of the money in the government, and this has given local governments and takes governors, state governors, a get-out-of-jail-free card.
All right, now you bring me back to politics and political economics, or let's discuss political economy as it were. The tax system, the tax administration and infrastructure and architecture system in Nigeria, side by side our emerging democracy, our growing and fledgling democracy, I must particularly say is still in the process of evolution. And that is why you see that some states are still struggling with whether or not they should allow local governments be autonomous and the extent to which local governments should actually enjoy that autonomy. So fiscal autonomy must be discussed side by side fiscal adequacy. The first thing that needs to be done is to prove that this tax bill and this new system will actually show up fiscal adequacy. You show the people, you show the governors, you show those at the grassroots that it will be adequate, it will meet our long-term demands and our short-term demands, and we will be able to fund development organically rather than going to Bretton Woods nations to actually fund development and then continue to amass debts that generations yet unborn are not even going to be able to pay. So once we have that adequacy pegs and plugs in place, we can shift over to autonomy. If there will be autonomy, it will be autonomy that is based on the fact that what is being adequate at the fiscal level, from the central to the state to the grassroots, the local government, is adequate enough to go round for all. So at this point in time, I would not advocate the discussion of fiscal autonomy. What we should focus on is to make it possible for every hands to be on deck and for the system to become more efficient and more integrated and more functional. Remove every pillars of dysfunctionality so that the maximum level of fiscal adequacy can be obtained, and then we can begin to have the gains of Pareto optimality, which means the system itself will be socially efficient, the cost of collecting taxes will not be more expensive for the government, and will not be higher than the benefits of collecting taxes. What we have seen in Nigeria today is that the taxation system is not socially efficient, hence it is not Pareto optimal. What does that mean? The marginal social benefits, and that's how the government thinks, the marginal social benefits that are supposed to be derived from collecting taxes obviously do not match up with the costs. So you find a system where you are collecting 10 billion in taxes, and the operational cost, the personnel cost for that system itself, or for that revenue service itself, is spending 12 billion. So most often than not, we're usually in deficit.
And not sustainable at all. Thank you so much, Kenneth Ikenwa, business and public policy analyst. Thanks for your insights and your time. Thank you.
Always my pleasure.